next we have, and I would like to introduce Rebecca McLinden. Rebecca is a board-certified behaviour analyst in Australia with a deep commitment to supporting individuals with both ADHD and or autism. Later on in life, Rebecca brings a unique perspective as she also had a diagnosis of ADHD. Since 2013, she's dedicated her career and working life of supporting and working closely alongside children, youth and adults across a variety of different sectors and also doing multiple roles. Rebecca is extremely passionate about empowering youth and young people and adults with ADHD. Rebecca has a wealth of knowledge, not only from Australia now, but also originating from the UK. And Rebecca truly believes that the right tools and support systems for ADHD individuals can be harnessed and they can be truly a powerful asset. Rebecca is driven by a mission to support and work closely alongside individuals with ADHD and those individuals also with a range of disabilities, and feels really privileged to be able to talk from her perspective as a person with ADHD, but also as well as somebody that has significant study and knowledge in this space, but also as well has worked alongside a number of people. Thank you, Beck.
Thank you, Mel. Such a lovely introduction. Can I just check that the slides are live? Yes, they are. Okay, let's jump straight into it. I really wanted to connect this presentation to parents and educators. As Mel said, I've worked with families and children with ADHD for about 18 years. And this is a collection, I guess, of the most, well, nothing simple, but kind of the most pragmatic strategies that I've found that can really help empower children and reduce challenging behaviours in the home or classroom or whatever setting your child is in. So let's get started. Very quick intro. I'm going to just discuss a little bit about PBS. That's the field that I currently work in within Australia. So that's positive behaviour support. And then we will jump into some practical strategies that you can try and apply. And hopefully, if I don't talk too much, we will have a little bit of time for question and answer at the end. Mel's already given me a great introduction, so thank you for that. But I do want to... I guess I was diagnosed with ADHD about 3 years ago. I had worked with children and families, like I said, for about 18 years and never recognized that in myself at all. So I think finding that about myself has really helped me to not only now take the research and the education that I've done and the work experience that I've had, but also now realizing that I have lived experience of that as well, and applying that to my work when I'm working with families has been really helpful. Okay, so very quickly, what is PBS? PBS is a framework in Australia. It's defined as a framework that combines contemporary disability support with the science of behaviour analysis. So it's a very person-centred approach. It puts the person with a disability at the centre of everything that we do and ensures we are abiding and advocating for their human rights, which is a huge focus of what PBS is. It also aims to improve quality of life. So that is our end goal. The goal is not to reduce challenging behaviours. The goal is to improve quality of life however we can. We tend to do this by looking at the environment. So the environment being what is around the person, who is around the person, what is the person feeling inside in their own internal environment, and how can we adapt this environment to suit their needs, embrace their strengths, and reduce challenging behaviours within the home and within the environments that they exist in. So my whole talk today is about creating a neuroaffirming space. And I want to talk about why I believe that is so important. And it's unfortunate that there are some really sad statistics that come along with having ADHD. Some of them, for example, is about 15% of people with ADHD will misuse alcohol and drugs in their life, compared to about 5% of neurotypicals. in adulthood, around 20 to 30% of people with ADHD will also be diagnosed with major depression. I also saw a statistic literally yesterday that said people with ADHD are 60% more likely to be fired from a job when they are in adulthood. And I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that we are feeling lost, feeling like we don't have a space to belong, not knowing how to act, how to be ourselves in a very neurotypical world. So I believe creating a neuroaffirmative space, which is a space where you feel safe, a space to connect to your bodies, a space to learn what we need and then embraces strengths. Doing that from childhood will hopefully mitigate some of those statistics as adults grow up. It is a contrast to a deficit-based approach, which focuses on fixing the impairments. And I don't believe that people with ADHD need to be fixed. They just need to have the support in their environment to be themselves. And like Dr. Sophie was talking about in her keynote speech, learn how to unmask and learn how to be their true, authentic selves in a world that was not built for them. So my hope is the strategies that I share with you today will give you some guidelines on how you can build that neuroaffirming space, and hopefully how we can, like I said, mitigate some of these sad statistics that come along with having ADHD. So I want to start with choice and control. Choice and control in Australia is something that is actually kind of built into the legislation when you practice positive behaviour support. It's a requirement to empower our participants with choice and control. But in a general sense, it is a way of thinking that, a way of thinking about how you can arrange your care and your support. There are lots of different elements to choice and control. I have some of them listed here. I want to start with autonomy. So autonomy refers to the freedom to have choice and to control your actions. Autonomy has been linked to have far-reaching positive effects on a child's development, including having benefits to executive function, to mastery-related behaviours, to supporting children to develop self-regulation skills, which is very important in ADHD, and to develop a healthy sense of self. I also want to point out decision-making. Decision-making is something that people with ADHD and children with ADHD particularly really struggle with. ADHDers have difficulty with working memory, with sequencing, with foreseeing or predicting the consequences of certain choices. And so we need to empower our children to build the skill of decision-making quite early on in life so that they get a lot of practice. Another thing I want to point out is dignity of risk. So the idea of dignity of risk is, well, we have a duty of care to keep our children safe, but everybody also has a human right of kind of dignity of risk, which is the dignity or the ability, the human right to make mistakes, to engage in risky behaviors, to learn from trial and error, to do things that neurotypical people can do. So these elements, I guess, of choice and control, so autonomy, motivation, decision-making, self-determination, dignity of risk, they're all really important kind of elements that we need to instill in our children so that they can grow up feeling motivated, feeling like they are in control, feeling like they have a choice, feeling like they have power and that they can take ownership over their own lives. I really want to point out as well the idea of assent and consent. I think, and it has been shown actually, that this is usually a right that is afforded to those who are deemed competent or able to give consent. But the idea of assent is that we can remove or give consent with our body language. We can remove and give consent when we're under 18. It doesn't have to be a legal thing. It's the idea that we are allowed to say no whenever we want. And we should be teaching our children that their ability to say no is important and is powerful. If we don't teach our children that they're able to say no, then they're going to grow up being overly compliant and putting themselves in some dangerous situations. So I really think it's important to teach children the idea of assent from a very early age. Okay, we are going to jump into the practical strategies. So the first one, very easy strategy. It's simply using a choice board. We all use visuals to make choices. For example, you've finished eating your dinner, you fancy a sweet treat, you go into the fridge and you scan from left to right, and you can see that there is an apple pie, a chocolate, or a yogurt. So you have these visual aids which have now determined what your choice is from. For people with ADHD, visual aids are especially helpful. We really struggle with executive functioning, and we can get caught up in what I call analysis paralysis. So this is when you have way too much choice, it becomes way too overwhelming, and instead of making any decision, you kind of shut down, your nervous system gives up, and you make no choice at all, and you get stuck. Having a visual aid, a really clear visual aid, can really, really help in displaying choices to your child. And it can also allow you to remove or reduce the amount of verbal direction that you're giving. When a child with ADHD is given too much verbal direction, it can start to feel like a demand, and it can cause ADHDers to shut down as well. So having a choice board, which is as simple as what you can see on the screen here, like 3 pictures in a row, for example, can really help a child to make a choice from a limited series of options. And it also allows you as a parent or as an educator, whichever setting you are in, to offer the choices that are actually available to that person at that moment. So it's really simple. You start off with 2 or 3 choices of preferred items. So when you're first introducing this, you really want to make a choice board fun. You want to make it valuable. So you would choose the child's favorite things and offer it to them and help them make that choice. As they become a little bit more comfortable with using a choice board, you can then start to gradually increase some non-preferred items. For example, you could use it at dinner time, saying, okay, we're going to have chicken nuggets and chips, your favorite, but you do have to eat 1 vegetable. So which vegetable is it going to be? And then given an option of 3 vegetables you know that they like. Over time, and as, like I said, they become more comfortable with using the choice board, you can start to add in maybe some of the more non-preferred items. So things like the chores that need to be done or the homework that they need to do that day. Whatever it is that you need to get your child to make a choice about, you can start to add in. But I really want to stress, don't be tempted to jump straight into adding the non-preferred activities just because they're things you need to be done. If we don't teach the child the value of the choice board early on by using fun things that are rewarding and exciting to engage in, they're not going to value the choice boards at all, and they will ignore it. Another great strategy, I think, is to create a flexible routine. ADHDers really struggle with impulsivity, hyperactivity, and focusing. They are the traits that are the defining factors of ADHD. These things can make it really, really difficult to get through a day. And when we add into that things like sensory difficulties, emotional dysregulation, lack of sleep, all of those other things that come with ADHD, it can become really difficult to just get through a day. And if you Google, how can I help my child with ADHD, I bet the first thing that comes up is to establish routines. And research does show that families who implement routines experience fewer externalizing symptoms of ADHD, such as tantrums or outbursts, impulsivity, anger, those things. And that's because predictability really helps with ADHD. It really helps with executive dysfunction. It helps with the anxiety of not knowing what's coming next. It really helps with time blindness because we struggle with understanding how long something might take. So having a routine built in for us would really help with that. But I've found through practice, and through my own experience as an ADHD woman, that routines are pretty boring to follow. There's no novelty, there's no excitement, when it's too predictable, it's even harder to stick to, because an ADHD mind thrives on novelty and excitement and challenge. So what I recommend to the families that I work with is to develop a flexible routine. So you do this by establishing what kind of routine it is you want to make. So break them down into small sort of sections of your day. So you might start with, for example, the return home from school until dinner time type routine. Break it down into chunks, but not too specifically. So you'll have, for example, unpack your lunchbox, then 15 minutes of homework needs to be done, and then 10 minutes chore, and then you can have 1 hour of independent playtime while me and your dad cook dinner. You want to embed choice in this wherever possible. So a huge tip is to use that choice board, like I said. You can give them choices to help your child feel more in control and feel like they do have more choice in that routine. And whether that's in the order the routine is done in or within the actual activities themselves. So, do you want to do your maths homework or your English homework? Do you want to play outside or play on your iPad? Giving the child choice and control will really help with that motivation. It's proven to help with motivation when a child feels like they're more in control of their own time. I would also try to build in movement time into every routine where possible. Science tells us that movement is really helpful for the ADHD brain to help it focus. So embedding, losing my words, embedding movement time built into your routines is really going to help your child to stay focused throughout that routine. Another tip is to use environmental cues. So wherever possible, have things that will keep your child on track for the routine by having things like a visual schedule or a to-do list or a timer to help them know when to move on to the next thing. Another option is to have all the items that they need out and kind of in a row. So, lunchbox and then the homework and then the items required to complete the chore that you want them to do. A top tip for your own sanity and for theirs is to practice compassion and understanding whenever possible. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes you wouldn't have had any sleep the night before. Sometimes your child wouldn't have had any sleep the night before. It might have been a really tricky day at school. We don't know what's happened, but sometimes some days are harder than others. And the main thing is to work towards consistency where possible. We're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for some sort of loose routine that helps us understand how to get through the day without it becoming overwhelming and really triggering that executive dysfunction. So back to choice and control, which we spoke about a few minutes ago. The more choice we build into a day, the more autonomy the child has, and the more motivation will be harnessed. I wanted to come back to this so that I could give some more specific strategies on how you can embed choice and control into your child's day through lots of different strategies. And these aren't strategies that need to be used all day, every day. They're kind of tools that you will pick and choose for whatever the moment allows for. So that's things like an effort menu. I find this really helpful, especially if you have a child who seems to be very avoidant of particular tasks. Breaking things down into an effort menu can really help. So this is, for example, if we're talking about tooth hygiene, you might break it down into a low effort, medium effort, or high effort. Low effort being, we just require mouthwash today, or 30 seconds of brushing will do. A medium effort might be, we're going to brush for 1 minute. And then the high effort might be the full routine of brushing your teeth, mouthwash, and flossing. You can ask your child, what is their effort level today? Which one are they willing to engage in? Otherwise, you could simply choose for them if you can recognize the signs of where your child is at and how many spoons they have that day, like what Sophie was referring to this morning in her keynote speech. Another strategy is to randomize choices. like I said before, sometimes being given lots of choice can actually feel like a demand for a child or any ADHD, regardless of age. And so sometimes randomizing a choice and putting it onto, say, a lolly stick or bits of paper in a hat that you just pull out and it's like, okay, this is what we've got to do right now. It takes the onus away from you being the instructor, the instruction giver, or you being the person demanding something, and puts it onto an inanimate object. And it also adds a little bit of fun and novelty to the choice. So children will be more amenable, I guess, to following through with the choice that has been made for them by this lolly stick. Choice boards, I already covered a little bit earlier. I think choice boards are a really helpful way to help ADHDers choose from the activities that are available. And I still use choice boards all the time now. I'm not ashamed to say my partner will write down on a whiteboard 3 things that need to be done that day, and I choose one of them. It does really help with that executive dysfunctioning and analysis paralysis. So it can be used with the pictures like I showed earlier, or it can just be, like I said, words on a whiteboard or on pieces of paper that can kind of help you to make that choice from what is available. A really easy option that you can add in throughout the day is time choices. So this is literally saying things like, do you want to do your homework now, or do you want to do it in 5 minutes? Would you like 10 more minutes on your iPad or 20 more minutes? Or it could be now or later, today or tomorrow. Those kinds of things can really help a child feel like they are motivated and they have autonomy over when they are doing something, and they can learn to harness when their own motivation is high and choose to engage in it during that time. Another option is material choices. So wherever possible, we can give a child the control over what materials they use to carry out the task you're asking them to do. For example, if it's dinner time, it could be, okay, do you want your food on your princess plate or your Spider-Man plate? Would you like your sandwich cut into triangles or into squares? Adding these little choices, it's really simple for us as adults to do, but it really gives that child the sense of autonomy and power that will help them with their motivation to engage. Again, I could spend probably a whole day talking about the choice to say no. I think it is very important that we teach children the choice to say no. We need to respect and honor when a child is telling us that they're unable to do something at that moment. And I think it's difficult sometimes I think if we don't teach a child the power of their own voice and the power of their assent and the power of their ability to say no, they will tell us that they mean no in different ways, whether that's challenging behaviors, tantrums, withdrawal. It could be many things. But we will still learn that they mean no, but it might not be in a socially appropriate way. Teaching children the ability to say no will protect them as well later in life as they learn to advocate for themselves, and when they're maybe put in riskier positions or positions where they need to advocate for themselves, hopefully they will have been taught that their voice is powerful from an early age. So I think teaching children the option to say no from really early on is going to save you from having to deal with difficulties kind of later in life. Okay, my favorite strategy, and this is a strategy that I use all the time as well for myself, and I use this constantly within my work each day, and it's a really fun way to engage your child, and that is this idea of gamification. So gamification is it's basically adding game elements to non-game environments to promote participation. So gamification adds novelty. I said before, ADHD brains really thrive on novelty. Adding gaming elements to mundane activities can really increase the novelty that we experience day to day and help us to be more motivated to engage in those activities. It's also adaptable. So you can think of a game on the fly, you can plan it ahead, you can apply it to any strategy. Creativity really is your only limitation with gamification. Another thing that's really great about gamification is it embeds rules. All games, whether they're online games, board games, apps on your phone, they all have some sort of rule that you need to follow to be able to level up or earn points or win the game. So you can embed rules into your games and teach your children how to follow rules, but in a much more fun and engaging way. It's also shown to increase motivation. So like I said, it adds that novelty. It's got that really great dopamine seeking kind of element to it, where a mundane activity can be turned into a game and make it much more motivating for children to engage in. So apologies for all the text on the slide, but I really did want to give some of the ideas of the games I found to be most helpful in my work and for myself. The first one is the family points game. So this is a game where you essentially have the tasks you need to do, but then you add points. So you could add points to chores or non-negotiable tasks that need to be completed through the week. At the end of each week or each day, you can tally up those points and see what each family member has got. You can make it as simple as something like 10 points equals an hour extra iPad time on Saturday. Or it could be as elaborate as an ongoing game where, I don't know, 10 points equals you've leveled up to unicorn status, and unicorns have special powers like immunity from chores for one day, plus extra iPad time, whatever it is that your child would be engaged by. So it's simply just adding points to things that need to be done and rewarding different levels of points. It's a really easy game to do. One that works especially well for me, I think, is racing against time. This game creates urgency, and urgency is a really good motivator for ADHD brains. So you can use things like timers on YouTube. There's lots of fun ones on YouTube. You could use songs. So an example my partner does with me is like, okay, we need to put the laundry away. I bet you can't do it all within 3 songs time. And even though I know it's silly, it works for me every time. I like to try and get it done before the 3 songs are up, because in my head, I know 3 songs is only about 9 minutes, and that doesn't seem like that much time. So I can definitely do it. And it adds a bit of fun into the mundane. I think it's really important to use external timers. So things like, songs, or before the microwave is finished, or timers on YouTube, rather than kind of racing against each other or racing against other family members. For example, I would avoid saying things like, you and your sister need to clean your bedrooms. Let's see who can finish it first, because that can cause a little bit of emotional dysregulation if it doesn't quite go right. So stick to the external cues and you'll be safe. There's also lots of games out, lots of apps, sorry. So gamification is becoming more and more researched, and people are seeing the power of gamification. And so they are adding lots of apps that will help people with ADHD. So my favorite one at the moment is Happy. This is, if you're from the 90s, you might remember Tamagotchis. It's like a little creature that you have in your phone, and it stays alive by you logging self-care tasks that you've done. Another example is Zombie Run. So this is a running app where you actually are running away from zombies, but it's tracking how far you travel as well, and you get different points. Another fun game is, and you would do this depending on your child's interests, their favorite characters, their favorite TV shows, things like that. You can do the mystery game. So we need to find the mystery of the smelly sock. There's a smelly sock in this house somewhere. We need to go around, collect all of the dirty laundry, put it in the hamper, and figure out which one is the smelliest. It's a really fun, really silly game that kind of, again, creates that sense of urgency and a little bit of healthy competition for children to engage in the mundane tasks that we're asking them to do. Some of the different outcomes you can get from gamification are things like points. You could use tangible items, so actual toys or, chocolate or whatever it is as the reward. You could offer up favorite activities or more time with favorite activities. A time bonus, so that could be something like an hour extra on the iPad or an hour daddy-daughter time or things like that. You can also offer immunity, which I've found to be particularly helpful is, you know, offering immunity if they do whatever it is that needs to be done today, like they complete all of their homework, then they get immunity from chores tomorrow. Sometimes just progress tracking, just the visual representation of seeing points on a board or seeing kind of the, I've seen people do like kind of graphs where, you know, you colour in a square for everything that's been done. Sometimes that alone, or ticking off the things on the to-do list, is reinforcing enough to kind of keep the momentum going. Okay. Talking about rewards, I did really want to touch on reinforcement. I think there's some misconceptions about what reinforcement is, and I wanted to cover them because I think it's really important to understand it to be able to reinforce your child's good or more wanted behaviours, I guess, and reduce the challenging behaviours where possible. We all use reinforcement to learn. So we've all gone through school getting praise from teachers, 100% marks on our tasks. We've had salaries from our jobs. Reinforcement also is there when we have a glass of wine after a really difficult day, or if we're itchy and we scratch and that removes the itch. That's also an example of reinforcement. So I want to just jump into what reinforcement is. So it is essentially adding something or something in the environment that increases the future likelihood of that behavior occurring again. And it's how we develop skills. There are two types of reinforcement. The first being positive reinforcement. So this is adding something into the environment to increase the future likelihood of behavior. So, for example, this could be given an ice cream when the homework is completed, or praise once they've done their chores, maybe a high five when they've been especially nice to their sister, those kinds of things. Salary after a hard day's work. There is also negative reinforcement, and this is removing something from the environment to increase the future likelihood of that behavior occurring again. So a good example of this, and one I often use, is, you know, we step outside, it's a really sunny day, and so we put on sunglasses. That's removed the sun from our eyes. So we've added the sunglasses and removed the sunlight. That increases the chance that next time it's sunny, we're going to wear sunglasses again because it helps. Another example could be we go into a really noisy environment, we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, so we pop in some earplugs and it dims or dulls the noise. So this is adding earplugs to remove the noise and will increase the likelihood that next time we know we're going to a noisy place, we take our earplugs with us. It's not bribery. And I really want to make that clear. Reinforcement is not the same as bribery. Bribery is something that typically happens after a challenging behavior has already occurred. So, for example, you're experiencing a tantrum in the supermarket and you say, if you stop crying, I'll give you a lolly. The behavior's already began, the challenge has already begun, and you're offering a reward for it to stop. That is a tricky place to find yourself in because it opens up the floor for negotiation and for the child to say, no, I want 2 lollies and then I'll stop crying. So it's different. Bribery is not the same as reinforcement. Reinforcement can be planned or it can happen kind of naturally, like in the example of sunglasses, removing the sunlight. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be delivered by someone else, but reinforcement is essentially something that is in the environment that increases the likelihood of the behavior happening again. So if we can learn to harness how to use reinforcement, we can really help our children to be successful in building skills. Okay, I tried to keep this talk as practical as possible with just giving some simple practical solutions that you can do day to day to help your child with ADHD. But I do think it's important to delve a little bit into the science behind reinforcement and ADHD. So research at both the neural and the behavioral level has shown that children with ADHD have motivation deficits. And it highlights phenomena such as the delay aversion, which is a tendency to avoid delayed gratification. We want things now. An ADHD brain has a very now and not now kind of mindset. And so we seek the reinforcement that is available immediately rather than waiting for reinforcement that may come later. There is also that's also describing kind of that delay discounting, which is a preference to have the reward now, a smaller reward now, rather than waiting for a bigger reward later. That's due to our impulsivity. We also know from research that there is something called the fast attenuation of the dopamine response. So this is the idea that ADHD brains really struggle to connect response to reinforcement. And so that's what helps having the dopamine that comes after kind of completion of a skill or completion of an action is what helps neurotypical people to develop habits, develop skills, and to kind of keep building on those skills. Whereas people with ADHD will struggle with that. They don't have that fast attenuation of dopamine response. And so the development or the understanding of like this, building on that skill and building habits is a lot harder. We also know from studies that ADHDers don't have that anticipatory dopamine, it's called, which is the dopamine that's kind of released in excitement of knowing that something great is coming soon. That a reward is coming at some point, which is, again, why we prefer that kind of now routine, the now reinforcement, the reinforcement that's much more available quickly. So with knowing all of that, it's important to know how to use reinforcement effectively. So first of all, what you need to do is identify some reinforcers. It's important to know that not all favorite things or rewards can be considered a reinforcer. A reinforcer can only be called such if it increases the future likelihood of that behavior occurring again. For example, I really love pizza. It's my favorite food. But if my boss said to me that she was going to pay me in pizza instead of paying me in dollars, I probably wouldn't be as engaged in work as I am. The effort really needs to match the reward. So the amount of effort that's being put in by the child to engage in an activity must be matched with the reward that's being offered at the end for the motivation to be maintained. Again, if my boss said, I really want you to work this week, but I'm going to pay you in pizza, I'm probably not going to put the effort in that I need to. We want to avoid satiation. So if you found a reinforcer that works, I don't know, maybe you identified, for example, a can of Coke or an hour extra iPad time as work today for your child to do what they need to do. It might not work tomorrow, and we can become satiated on reinforcers, and this applies for everyone, not just children with ADHD. Using the pizza example again, if I'd just eaten a whole pizza and then my partner came in and said, right, we need to do a spring clean and I'll get us a pizza afterwards, it's probably not going to work because I'm full up on pizza already and I don't want any more. So the idea is to keep rotating it as much as possible. In the beginning, we want to make sure that reinforcement is delivered immediately, and research tells us that within 3 seconds is the most potent. So delivering the reinforcement really quickly will help with that connection between this is the skill that I've just done, or this is the behavior I've just engaged in, and here's the reinforcement, and I'm going to do that again in the future. As a child starts to learn delayed gratification, you can start to deliver the reinforcement a little bit later. A really good tip is to use a visual, so something like a voucher. For example, if the reward or the reinforcement is, a family day out to a theme park on Saturday, you might kind of deliver the voucher now of, hey, here's your voucher. On Saturday, we're going to go to your favorite theme park. So you're delivering the promise now, but the actual reward comes later. So there's still reinforcement that's delivered quickly, but you get the benefit of delaying that where possible. I think another thing is it's really important to kind of evaluate your reinforcement system often. It won't work all the same every day. you need to kind of be looking out for those signs in your child and figuring out, you know, is this still working? Is this matching the effort I'm requiring from them? Are they struggling to engage in the gamification and the point system that I've just developed? It can be disheartening sometimes if you spend a long time kind of developing a reinforcement system or a strategy to use, and then it doesn't work in the way you imagined it to. But the best advice that I can give is just to keep trying, keep changing it, keep the novelty high. The more novel you make things and the more you rotate the reinforcements, that the more motivation you are going to maintain from your child. Another thing is on tricky days, a tricky day looks different for everyone, but on a tricky day, we might need to increase the reinforcements that we're delivering, even for skills that are already developed. An example, when like I'm a 34-year-old woman who has a successful career, but there are still days when doing the washing up or, you know, cleaning the balcony outside is just way too hard for me. And my partner can he can recognize this in me, and he can change and adapt the reinforcement that he gives me. And even though I know that's what he's doing, it still helps. It still speaks to my ADHD brain. So sometimes, even though I'm fully capable of doing the washing up, it's too hard for me that day. And so the reinforcement kind of needs to be increased. And so you can do that with your child as well. Okay, I tried to squeeze a lot into that short talk, but I think if there's some conclusions that we can take, it's choice and control is the key thing. It's giving your child as much choice and as much control through the day as possible, and being as flexible in your routine wherever you can. This will really help to build those autonomy skills. It will help with developing executive functioning. It will help them to develop reasoning and decision-making skills, which are all going to contribute to you having to fight less battles each day, and for your child to have to fight less battles each day. The more in control that they feel, the more autonomous they feel, the less challenging behaviors you tend to see. Another is gamification is key. So the research tells us that dragons, pixie dust, points boards, all those things, they are a research-proven way to help your child engage in tasks. So use them wherever possible. I use them on myself all of the time. You can use it as a family a family game that will bring you all together as well. And the last thing is we all need reinforcement. I think people shy away from rewards because they feel that their child may become dependent on them. But it's important to recognize we all need reinforcement, and we all have it in some form. You know, we all work for a salary. We all like a glass of wine or chocolate at the end of the day, at the end of a tricky day. We all like praise from our friends, our partners, our bosses, all of those things. We all need reinforcement, and children with ADHD just needed that little bit more. And that is me. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for staying with me for that one. And my details are there on the page. If you want to get in contact with me, please feel free. I'm happy to share any strategies and advice.
Thank you, Beck. Look, I think, talking as a mum of a child with ADHD, I've learned so much around specific strategies that can be implemented, and I'm sure a wide range of professionals have as well. Really useful information. I've probably got 2 questions that are just burning that I'm really keen to ask you, if I may. So first of all is, how do people find out more about gamification?
Oh, well, it's gamification is actually a really hot topic at the moment. And if you're on TikTok or Instagram, you've probably seen, and follow ADHDers, you've probably seen a lot of examples of it. Honestly, I would say the easiest way to find out more about gamification is to Google gamification. Like so many different blog posts and things like that will pop up for you. Another thing is to just, gamification, it doesn't follow strict rules other than there's got to be some novelty in it. There's got to be some engagement, and it's whatever's fun for you and your child. So I encourage people to think back to, those car rides where before phones existed and we were stuck in the car for 2 hours and you would play random games to keep engaged. Like, I don't know, I Spy and things like that. I think just Google and digging really deep into your imagination. There is also a lot of books. So if you Google like games for my ADHD child, or if you search for games to teach social skills and things like that, you will find books where there's activities like 100 games for your ADHD child and things like that. So there is lots of things available. And if people are struggling, I'm happy for you to email me and I'll send you a list of recommendations.
Beautiful. Thanks, Beck. And the other final question is, obviously speak about lots of, examples around amazing strategies that work really well with children. Could I just ask, do these also potentially apply to older individuals and to adults?
Yeah. I think I gave a few examples there of where they work for me. And like, I'm a 34-year-old woman. So yes, they definitely do. I think the main thing you need to consider is, making it age appropriate. So for a child that's young, you might use, for example, if we're talking about the choice boards, for example, it may be using pictures or even the actual items. Whereas for your teenager, you might just write things down on a whiteboard or a piece of paper. For the gamification, you have to be a little bit more subtle. I think with the teens, they do tend to resent when they can see you're trying to trick them into things. So I think just making sure that it's age appropriate and talking to your child as well and getting them as involved as possible into these strategies, asking them what works for them and following their leads to promote that autonomy will be really helpful.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Beck. Amazing presentation, a huge amount of information to be able to give to our audience today. And like you say, if anyone needs to reach out, you've provided your details, please do so. So thank you so much.